Welcome to another episode of Pound for Pound Boxing Report. I'm your host Michael. Joining me this week, Daniel from the Inscriber, Jacob from Jab Hook. What's going on, fellas?
Hey,
Good evening.
We did the show uh, Saturday night, live after the Joshua Ruiz bout, and we're right back here a few days later. For those who are new, Pound for Pound Boxing Report, Pound for Pound Boxing Report live YouTube show, podcast, as well as a blog discussing all things boxing. The motto is when boxing is good, we will talk about it. When boxing is bad, we will talk about it. Bottom line is, if it concerns boxing, we will talk about it. Good, bad, and in this case, the unexpected, the highly unexpected. For those who want to find out all things regarding Pound for Pound Boxing Report, the blog page is the place to go to, p4pboxingreport.wordpress.com. That's the link. You check the rather blog page. See you will see the links to where to find us all over social media, where to find us all over platforms that carry podcasts, including the Apple iTunes, which for those who don't know, iTunes is getting ready to end soon. But we'll still be on Spotify, um SoundCloud, Mixcloud, uh, Google Play Music, um, Google Podcasts, and just about every other available platform that do carry podcasts. Also, we have a couple of donate links. Let donation be the best nation. You check the right of the blog page. You will also find links to the PayPal and Cash Me donate links. And for those who don't know, I am a Beachbody coach, or online health and fitness coach for Beachbody. Um, starting a, I'm starting a accountability challenge group July 1st. Let's call it Let's Build Together. If you're interested, or if you're interested in anything regarding Beachbody products, programs, equipment, got a link to my online coaching page. So please hit me up there as well. Let's get things going. Um, did a live episode, like I said, talking Joshua and Ruiz regarding, for those who don't know or who've been sleeping under a rock, been discussing Andy Ruiz' shocking seventh round stoppage win over Anthony Joshua June 1st at Madison Square Garden, New York City. We're going to begin the show talking about it again after having a few days to kind of relax, decompress, if you will, and just get over the shock and just really analyze what went on. I will go to you, Jacob. Uh, First off, your thoughts on the fights in the few days after the what you saw Saturday night.
First off, I think I want to do a little cleaning up of the media, or we'll just say casual media. There's a lot of personalities out there that don't know anything, basically what they're talking about, and they judge.
I wasn't going to go there, but I
Well,
think
I'm
I know
gonna.
who you talk. I know who you talk about. I'm gonna let you have it. I'm gonna let you have it. The
I
floor is
mean,
yours.
there was multiple people online that were saying this. Most Stephen A. Smith was one. Shannon, I think Shannon Sharp was the other one. You know, if they, I know that they're their personalities, and I'm sure they do a lot of this stuff on purpose just to get clicks and and like they say, there's no such thing as bad publicity. As long as people are talking, they have their name in their mouth, and it gets them more famous in these day and age. But you know really it's disrespectful to the sports, disrespectful to these people just to judge somebody on the way that they look and not consider them an athlete. I mean, I can point to the NFL, like the offensive linemen, and a lot of those guys are huge and heavy, but they are athletes. They are able to perform at a high level that Stephen A in his wildest dreams couldn't do. He can last 5 minutes on a line or in a boxing ring, let alone you know probably any other sport. So a lot of people were again, it was an upset because the odds, but this is the heavyweight division, and I think I spoke to it on your show when we were talking about the replacement of Big Baby with Andy Ruiz. And Andy Ruiz is a good fighter. He doesn't have the build of an Adonis, but a lot of that's and I'm sure you know this, Mike. a lot of these guys that carry, that kind of physique, the oxygen that has to go to their arms and their muscles, like they tend to fade, and it can almost be a detriment. Like some of the guys that are a little bit too built. Um, and you know, this is a heavyweight fight, and Andy Ruiz came in with determination. He came in with strategy. He did get caught with the left hand, but he has a good chin. He recovered fast, and when Joshua opened up, he caught him, and he caught Joshua right on the equilibrium, like right on the temple. And I think from then on, it was over. I did think that he kind of might have made a mistake, letting Joshua off the hook, because he was, you could see Joshua was visibly hurt. But he was calm and collective, and he just waited and picked his spots again, and he was able to hurt him. And when Joshua went to the corner and the ref was asking him, he had spit out his mouthpiece at that point. It was on the ground, and he asked him. Joshua didn't really respond. He didn't really look like he wanted to be there. So you know, he's been through some adversity before, and he's been able to get out of it. But this is, if anything, should be a learning lesson for him. I hope that he doesn't, buy into all this trash that people are talking. And I still think he's a good fighter. Obviously, he has things that he needs to work on in his game. Maybe maybe overlooked Andy Ruiz a little bit. He might have, um, because his road to the heavyweight championship has been. I mean, it hasn't been easy, but it's been relatively easy. He hasn't really faced big competition. In my opinion, but the best fighters are able to come back and learn from their mistakes and able to fix those deficiencies they have, and then come back and and win and get on the winning ways again. Like we say before, it's not about having the O on your record, it's about your legacy, and how you fight, and how you deal with adversity. For Andy Ruiz, big ups to him. I mean, he's you know arguably he's undefeated. I thought he beat Parker in their match, but he had a lottery ticket, and he punched it, and good for him. Like I'm really happy for him. I'm really happy that he's able to I think do some things with his family, in the sense that I think he wasn't really making a ton of money before, but now he I think he made 4 or 5 million for this fight, and he'll make even more for the rematch. So good on him. He's able to do something, and he's going to go down in history, and you know not much more I could say.
4 or 5 million. I'm hearing upwards of seven. Um, in terms of your criticism of mainstream sports personalities, most notably Stephen A. Smith, what makes him and what he said initially after the fight so egregious and so disrespectful, and why guys like ourselves who talk boxing on a regular basis, who actually really cover it day by day, and particularly boxers themselves, whether it was Canelo who called him out, whether it was Lennox Lewis who called him out, uh, current world champions like Caleb Plant, uh, Devin Haney called him a clown, um, and even Andy Ruiz had a bit of a clapback for Stephen A. Smith. Uh, the thing that what made Stephen A. Smith's comments so bad is that he professes himself to be a serious boxing fan. He professes himself to be a hardcore fan, and he's used his mouth and what he claims he knows about boxing and what he claims his love for boxing to essentially get, or been given, depending on your perspective, a coveted slot on ESPN to discuss the sport, whether it's pre-fight stuff or whether it's post-fight discussion with either as a standalone on ESPN Sports Center or with Teddy Atlas. And throughout his tenure on ESPN talking boxing from jump, Whether it's his first quote unquote appearance talking Pacquiao and Jeff Horn, and he tried to break down Jeff Horn's appearance. I mean, not appearance, but his resume, his competition, and he didn't know who Randall Bailey was, which is ridiculous. Um, his clashes back and forth on air with say an Andre Ward or Timothy Bradley, or this latest episode, he keeps it, the evidence mounds and builds up that he's not a serious boxing fan. He's not hardcore like that. He's a casual, and I will argue a questionable casual, because I know casuals uh, uh, who have a better grasp, a better knowledge of the sport, be it past or present tense, present day, than he does. I know casuals who know who Randall Bailey is. You know,
Yeah, if he was a hardcore, he would know who Ruiz is. And even beyond that, it's part of the boxing media to do their research. When a fight it gets announced and the opponent, we have the computer, we have the internet. We basically everything's at your fingertips. All it takes is a night of research to you could have seen his previous fights. You would have known that he fought Joseph Parker in a championship fight, and seen that he was, I like I said, I thought he won that fight, and a lot of people think he did, but he was at least competitive.
and
So
it's not just that, he keeps inserting foot in mouth, sir. No one to hold him, no one to fold him, no one to walk the fuck away. He keeps making assertions, jokes, comments about Andy Ruiz's physical appearance. He keeps trying to say, well, the bigger picture is we're not going to see Wilder and Joshua, two undefeated fighters. We're not going to do this. Not, dude, you keep missing the point. You keep missing the point, and then you keep doubling down. Then when people try to talk some sense into you, you're so narcissistic, you're so full of yourself, you're unwilling to listen. This ain't basketball, dude. This ain't basketball. You're out of your depth. You're out of your depth. If it comes to the NBA, I give you that. But when you step into another person's arena and you sit there and profess like you know all, and when people give you facts otherwise, and you still want to double down and act like you know all, and that the people, how are you gonna sit there and try to talk down Lennox Lewis like he doesn't know what he's talking about? How are you going to go on a show and then go on air and talk down Canelo Alvarez and act like he don't know what he's talking about? You sound like a fool. A fool. And that's the problem with Stephen A. Smith. He's too full of himself to know A, when he's wrong, and B, when to listen. He ain't listening. I'll go to you, Daniel. Get into this thing about Stephen A. Smith, and again, your breakdown of the fight. Uh, um, 3 4 days after what you saw Saturday night, and let me give a shout out to Mr. Thumper. Let me give a shout out to Lisa Bells in the chat room.
All right. I could start at the fight, but since we've approached the elephant in the room, we might as well talk about the elephant in the room. First of all, it's been long established that the role of Stephen A. Smith when it comes to any discussion, when it comes to boxing, whether it comes to basketball, unless he's just talking one-on-one, and especially, like I said, when it's our first take, is he's an instigator. He has to say things to get you riled up and pay attention. Because guess what? It doesn't matter if it's good or bad or embarrassing him. We have to remember this is the same guy that we made fun of because of the Snapchat baby filter app.
It's just one thing to be wrong. It's another thing to be loud and wrong.
Yeah.
And ever since Saturday night, he's been both loud and wrong.
Yeah, but that's the point, though. That's his game. He will be loud and he will be wrong, but the problem is we give him clicks. The problem is we give him views. That's the problematic of it, because at the end of the day, when it comes to this whole thing, okay, we kind of get it. Okay, Andy Ruiz, yes, he doesn't look like remotely like a heavyweight champion as far as just like a physical appearance. Yes, we all thought Anthony Joshua was just gonna demolish him in this fight, but it's true in a sense. Like Jacob mentioned, if he was a hardcore fan, he would have known who he is. And then there's other idiots. I forgot who it was that tried to claim that Andy Ruiz was just an American of Mexican parents, not knowing full well that he represented Mexico in amateur competition.
Yup.
Like that when they talked about him, they don't talk to him about being from Periban, California. Talk to him about from Baja California.
And let me get this out the way. For some American fans, quit trying to take the Mexican out of this dude. One, he's not going to do it. He is Mexican. Two, if you keep at it, you know who's really not going to put up with it? Mexicans and Mexican Americans. Stop it. Go ahead.
Okay, but at the end of the day, this is how we have to focus on it when it comes to certain issues. When it comes to how we're going to view things and how we as people are going to digest it as boxing fans. Because the thing is, at the end of the day, when it comes to this, it does get clicks. Like I said, it does get clicks. It does provide more eyes to the sport because a buffoon is talking about boxing and more pay attention to food, but maybe they'll pay attention to the fact that, hey, Andy Ruiz is a Mexican-American champion. He is a good story. He is what Chris Arreola wanted to be. But it's a double-edged sword because it's still a buffoon talking. And it's not just him. Like I said, it's for other people that and other cancer fans that do the same thing because as much of a valid point that he has, and he has a semi-valid point, when it comes to feeling the sense of being robbed in the way of the unique situation of having two undefeated heavyweight champions fighting to be the man. I get that in a sense, but we kind of had that a little bit with Wilder Fury too. Two undefeated top heavyweights that put everything out there. So we kind of had that already. So it's just the buffoonery of it. It just makes it seem like people don't want to pay attention. And I get the part where you don't want to pay attention. I get it. Because if you don't pay attention, then it's easier to hide some of the mistakes.
Okay, and I say this, let me preface this. We all, when previewing the fight last week, we all felt that Anthony Joshua was going to win, right? Mm-hmm. But at the same time, we gave credit where credit was due when it came to Ruiz. Here's my thing. How are folks going to spend so much time looking at the physical appearance of Ruiz? And again, I had an issue with the fact that he came in at 260. I thought it was a little bit too much. I wondered how he's going to move. But how are you going to stick so much on the aesthetic, the physical appearance of Ruiz? But before he came in as a substitute, you felt that Big Baby Miller, that was a legit opponent. When Big Baby Miller is bigger and way more than Andy Ruiz, plus Andy Ruiz has a better resume than Big Baby. It makes no sense.
All right. Well, I can describe it like this when it comes to Big Baby, and this is something that goes a little bit into how we view certain ethnic groups. With Big Baby, you kind of expect it, like a big guy, pretty big, lean, athletic, because he tends to look like he's a football player in a way, like a lineman, without so much girth, but it's still athletic. Whereas a lot of times, Latino athletes, mainly just because of the majority of the Latino population being somewhat smaller in size, it's less acceptable that a guy that looks like Ruiz gets ahead, and it, when people are used to seeing smaller, leaner, more distinguished guys in that area. That's one aspect of it, but we're going to leave that aesthetic alone because we know it's dumb. We know it doesn't tell the tale because should we remind folks of how big George Foreman looked in his second stint as heavyweight champion when he knocked down Michael Moore? Should we talk about how, like, the whole plethora of fighters that don't really look like they're chiseled, but somehow they're really, really great? Because there's a whole list. There's Johnny Tapia. There's, in a way, Eric Morales later on in his career. There's a list you can go on and on, but we'll leave that alone for the moment. Let's go to the fight. The fight itself, looking at it a days on end, it feeds into the dangers of having a late opponent with such a different style, and B, it does provide certain issues that Joshua never has dealt with, and it hasn't dealt with since the Dillian White fight, which is that he's susceptible to left hooks, and he doesn't take body shots that well, because if people notice, Ruiz was hitting him throughout, especially after the third round, hitting him with not just jabs, real decent body shots, straight rights or straight lefts to the body. Didn't have to be the hooks, and that took a lot of steam out of Joshua because he's never really had to deal with it. Most of the people that he's fought, whether it has been Takam, whether it has been Brazil, Joseph Parker, even Charles Martin in a way, right, when the first one that he got, just headhunted. Because of, let's face it, there is a reputation out there, and this loss kind of validates a lot of it, that Joshua can be a bit chinny. Because you brought up pictures, Mike, like I said before, and I know I wasn't there last week, unfortunately, but you brought up the pictures where he looked a little bit beat up.
Yes.
And there's always been stories of him getting a little bit when it comes to sparring. There's, like I said, the infamous story, I must say, the infamous story of David Price knocking him out. And because of that story, it's fed into a whole lot of other things, that he focuses too much on bodybuilding and not enough on stamina. That, like I said, we have to remember that, yes, he's an Olympian, but just like Wilder, he was a bronze medalist, they didn't really have a lot of amateur experience. Yes, he's more polished than Wilder, but they both have been pretty much learning on the job for like the first 10, 15 fights. Wilder's still learning in a way. Joshua's just a little bit more polished, but he didn't have as steep of a background. And it kind of reminded me in a way, not so much the aesthetic, but just how different the depth felt to the Ito Herring fight a couple weeks ago, where You had Ito, who has been knocking people out with a lot of power, but facing that guy and hearing that, yeah, he's had a couple of losses. He hasn't looked good, but he has such much more of a foundation because of his amateur background that he outboxed him. And that's what wound up happening in this fight. Joshua, because he hasn't learned how to block hooks, particularly left hooks, let a guy who has deceptively fast hands get him into a firefight that once that left hook landed in the third round, he was never going to win. That's the difference in comes to this fight. And that's something that Team Joshua has to fix. And they have to fix it fairly soon, because if they don't, you are going to have problems in this rematch that they exercised today or yesterday.
Yeah, Eddie Hearn, he enacted the rematch yesterday. I'm going to you, Jacob. What Daniel talked about the flaws that he saw in Anthony Joshua. Joshua, for those who've been sleeping under a rock, Joshua came out a bit tentative, in my opinion. First 2 rounds, he was able to kind of find his bearings a little bit in round 3, caught Ruiz with a left hook, put Ruiz down, but Ruiz, he went down, but he wasn't hurt, in my opinion. He got up. Seconds later, caught Joshua with, to Daniel's point, the left hook in the temple. And from that point on, he never really recovered, in my estimation. Went down from the follow-up shots after the left hook to the temple, went down for a second time in the third round. Survived 4th and 5th. He looked like he started compose himself in round 5th, but 6th round, Ruiz started to find Joshua's body. And at the end of the 6th round, to me, Jacob, Joshua was done. The 7th round, it was just a wrap. Hurt Joshua again, put him down in the 7th. Joshua went to his corner, and to Daniel's I think it was to your earlier point, he said he wanted to continue, but body language to me suggested that he didn't want anymore. Daniel mentioned the flaws to the left hook. Dillian White came out with a video yesterday, I believe it was, in which he said that his view of Joshua, he said that Joshua is open to the left hook. He put so much, to paraphrase him, he put so much meat in his right hand, he doesn't bring it back properly, and he doesn't see the left hook, Dillian White says. And to me, Jacob, it's not just the flaws of him getting hit with the left hook. It's the conditioning. We know he's susceptible up the gut. His physique, he's very, very muscular. He's built like a defensive end. He looks like Julius Peppers in there, the way his physique. And the tried and true thing in boxing is boxers with that kind of heavily muscled football physique, they don't have any long-term stamina. And in this fight, you can argue that something was wrong with Joshua. A lot of people feel that way. But yeah, something may have seemed to be wrong with Joshua, but the fatigue issue, they rose his ugly head again, along with the fact that he's vulnerable to left hooks, and once he got caught with that left hook in a vulnerable spot, the fight was over. And once Ruiz found that body, you knew he was going to get knocked out.
I mean, I would argue that Joshua didn't recover after the 3rd round.
Right.
His legs just didn't. There was no foundation there, and we all know that without that foundation, the building is going to crumble. And on top of that, you're not getting, your power comes from your legs. So if he's not, using that, and when he's throwing his punches, and so he's not generating any power, then that's another problem, because that's how you're going to keep the guy off of you. Joshua, I mean, he's flawed. I mean, we knew this. He's not. I would argue. I mean, I'm sure people are going to argue with me, but I think Wilder he doesn't have a lot of what I would call fundamental skills, like in the way he throws punches and the way he does a lot of things. And I think Joshua is better at, like, fundamentals of boxing. But Wilder has that power, and he has a decent chin, because he's been hurt before, but he's been able to recover. Um, Joshua, he's been hurt before, and he has been able to recover. But to your point about the whole muscle thing, it's probably a good idea for him to maybe slim down on some of that muscle, because again, it's the oxygen that has to go to the muscles when you're that built. It tires them out faster, and that's just facts. And he he gets tired in a lot of his fights as the fight goes on. And you can see he gets visibly tired, and his hands start to drop because his muscles become too heavy. um, I don't know if we have, when we're comparing heavyweights, I don't know if we have a Frank Bruno situation on our hands here, who also had an Adonis physique, but wasn't, the best, as far as boxer, or a Lennox Lewis, who has a little bit more tubbiness to him, but he had good skills, and really good jab, and used his length and his reach really well. I mean, I think Joshua could have done a lot of things different in this fight, especially use his jab more to keep Andy at bay, and use that right hand, and maybe tie up, um, to not leave himself exposed. I mean, I think one of his biggest mistakes was not maybe overlooking Andy Ruiz's hand speed. So when he knocked him down and he went for the kill, Ruiz was able to counter and catch him, because he's got really good, fast hands, and he has a good chin. So I mean, I agree with you. I don't think he was hurt. I think he just got caught, and the momentum. These are heavyweights, so you get hit with a good punch, you might not necessarily be hurt, but you might fall down. But he got back up, and he didn't look hurt at all. So there's a lot of things that Joshua needs to work on. And again, this is heavyweight, so one punch can change a fight. You know, and to speak on the earlier comment about fights being ruined because somebody's not undefeated, records don't mean anything in boxing, in my opinion. They are an indicator of things, but what we want fighters in their prime to fight each other, and not have fights go past expiration date. So a Joshua Wilder fight is still intriguing to me if it happens within the next year, regardless if they're undefeated or not, because it's still a good, like, as far as a stylistic matchup, it's still something to see. They're still two top heavyweights, for sure. And the heavyweight division is it's got new life in it because of ever since Klitschko era has ended. There's you got Fury, you got Ruiz now, Joshua, Wilder, White. There's a lot of guys in there that are in the mix. So and it's good. I think it's good for the sport. You don't want to have a dominant champion that's maybe not exciting, not not being challenged. So Joshua has a lot to do and to think about. But again, it's really we're gonna see a lot, I think, in the second rematch, to see whether or not his heart is really in it or not. If he is really a fighter, or is he is he a Frank Bruno in not so many words.
Let's touch on the rumors that have been running rampant since the end of the fight. Rumors that Joshua was knocked out in sparring. Rumors that he suffered a panic attack. When Joshua posted his video last night, he said he did not suffer a panic attack. Stuff with a rumored knockout. I don't know. Various other channels have been reporting this. Other people on social media be it Twitter, be it Facebook, they've been reporting that he was knocked out. I don't know. I don't know anything of substance, but it's out there. Do I believe that Joshua was hurt? Could have been hurt in camp? Yeah. Uh, his facial damage says that he had a pretty rough camp and took some shots. He says he didn't suffer a panic attack. I'll take him at his word for now. Uh, After the fight, you can see Joshua's dad was visibly upset at Eddie Hearn. Joshua said basically, look, this is all on me. I'm the one who stepped in the ring. I'm the one who has to take this loss like a man. I'll go back to you, Daniel. Commentary on all the rampant rumors, innuendo that's been running around post fight.
Oh man, well, when the plans fall apart, this is the situation. You have to find something to blame. And that is the problem when it comes to this modern era. Because right now, everything was supposed to be set up for Joshua to wipe out Ruiz, possibly fight Pulev, because Pulev or whoever is going to be deemed the WBO mandatory, which could be Dylan White, by the way. Take care of those, find out about the Pulev situation, and then try to set up a fight in 2020 with Fury and Wilder. That's the plan. And then this gets thrown out into it. You have to find blame. Unfortunately, and that's a lot of parts when you have situations like this. You have to, as a society, we tend to always find blame. Assign blame better than just congratulate Andy Ruiz. In this sense, like all the innuendos, because everybody expected, like I said, Joshua to wipe out Ruiz in the way he did, the way that Ruiz actually wiped out Joshua. And they had to find some way over because they can't really believe, like, I saw a video, like, I forgot the guy that Chris Algieri beat in the same card, mind you. He said that he tried to say, like, oh, Anthony Joshua, he wasn't 100%. There's, like I said, we all talked about the panic attack. I said the little, like, sparring. Everything was trying to point to something that's saying, like, that wasn't really Joshua. The real Joshua would have wiped out Ruiz. We don't know that at this point. Because there's enough stories that have gone on throughout the years that should tell you that maybe that chin situation that Joshua has is more than just innuendo. And there's enough evidence with actual decent fighters that, like I said, actual decent fighters that will show you that a lot of it is valid. Now, it's gonna eat itself. It's probably gonna die out when the press conference for the rematch happens, because what you're gonna see people sell is the redemption of Anthony Joshua. Can AJ recover and rightfully reclaim his throne? Whereas the story could just be, can Ruiz capitalize on knowing that he can take Joshua's punches? And be better preparation, maybe come in sooner. Maybe stop him sooner. But that's just gonna be the whole situation. Remember, everybody has people that had a lot of plans want to blame somebody for those plans being thrown away. And I agree with Jacob. We're still going to see Wilder and Joshua. Still going to be a good fight. It'll still be a hell of a fight. Yes, technically, it's not two undefeated guys, but at this point, a lot of the best fights are coming in with guys that have wins and losses on their record, that have been seasoned a little bit. So people just need to relax when it comes to these, a lot of the rumors and innuendos, because at the end of the day, you just have to give it credit that maybe, just maybe, Andy Ruiz was just a better man that night. It wasn't something done for Joshua. Just maybe that Andy Ruiz had Anthony Joshua's number that night, and we'll see whether that was a fluke or not in the rematch.
Um. Okay. Unrivaled. What I'm going to do is I'm gonna post the link right quick, and I'm going to send it. I'm gonna take it off immediately. So if you want to join, please do. Going back to the fight itself, um, Eddie Hearn enacted the rematch clause. Anthony Joshua said he's going to fight the rematch on the video he posted last night. I'll go back to you fellas. Uh, the question on the table is: Should Joshua? Is it? Do you think it's a smart move for Joshua to go back for the immediate rematch, or given the flaws that we've all talked about, do you think that he needs a fight or two to correct those flaws before he gets back in the ring with Ruiz? Because based on what I saw, again, because so many mainstream folks have not really appreciated Ruiz's talent, um, not give him the credit he deserved coming in and after the fight. Based on the way Joshua was kind of exposed, based on the skill set of Ruiz, they'll fight again. But if Joshua doesn't correct some things and correct some things soon, I see Ruiz beating him again. So is this immediate rematch they're going for? Is it smart by Team Joshua?
I think so. I mean, he was the champ, unified champ, and I don't think, because I think worst case scenario, he fights somebody else and then he gets beat by that person, then it's over. At least with Ruiz, again, he did knock Ruiz down. So I mean, it's not like Ruiz had a perfect fight. He still has some attributes that he can use to his advantage and just fight a smarter fight. But again, this is what happens when you step up your competition. You got to deal with different things. Your focus has to be on their attributes and, again, like you were saying, fix your deficiencies. So I think it's a smart thing to do, because if he's a lose in a quicker fashion or just a disastrous fashion again, he might want to rethink what it is that he wants to get out of the sport. I mean, I'm sure he's made a ton of money, and you know, I think when he has a gold medal, I mean, he has some accomplishments. He was a champion, but like if he can't compete with the higher level people, then what's the point? So I don't think it's a good idea to wait. I just think he needs to refocus, and I think he can beat Ruiz. Obviously Ruiz can beat him, but he can beat Ruiz. He just has to do some things differently. And so that's, focus your training camp, get rid of your distractions, because I do think that he is very distracted by his celebrityism. So, if he can focus on just a game plan and fighting and watch film and do a few different things, it's a very winnable fight still.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, thanks, Michael, for getting me on. He's gonna have to take the rematch because even though Ruiz won fair and square, I still think Joshua lost that fight. Like, he made the mistake, and then Ruiz capitalized because up until that point, Ruiz was on the deck, and it looked like he was gonna lose that fight, and then Joshua stayed in the pocket. It depends how Joshua looks in the rematch. I agree with what Jacob was saying. The only thing is, though, I think people are making something too big of the knockdowns. He did get dropped 4 times, but he didn't really recover from the first knockdown, and that's why he kept getting dropped. But I would assess him properly after the rematch because I personally think he he either underestimated Ruiz or he thought he could walk through his punches, because when he dropped him, you never leave yourself in the pocket for that long against a shorter, more stockier guy. And Ruiz had faster hands, and it looked like he had heavy hands as well. I don't think he's as heavy-handed as Wilder or maybe even Joshua himself, but he's got enough pop to knock people out and even get their respect. And I think I'll give a proper assessment after the rematch, but he's gonna have to take the rematch and he's gonna have to show Ruiz a bit more respect.
Normally, I don't respond to requests to join the show for folks in the chat to join the show. I just like to keep it between us regulars. But I see Hamed has joined us. Unrivaled Boxing Talk, aka McGregor. I've been in discussions with him on other folks' channels. He's a person I've gotten to know and trust, and we've had some really hard-hitting discussions about fights and fighters from the past. So I want to thank him for being on, and Gail for Community Digital News. She's now joined the show. I want to get Gail into this discussion as well as you, McGregor. I'm gonna go to Gail first. First of all, your breakdown of the fight, having a few days to ponder on what went down, and I don't know if you was able to listen to us from the beginning, but we kind of went into the elephant in the room in terms of mainstream guys, particularly certain mainstream guys who profess themselves to be serious boxing fans, talking a lot about the fight, particularly as it pertains to Ruiz. Comments that's been viewed by many boxers, fans alike, as disrespectful, notably one Stephen A. Smith. So give your thoughts on the fight, as well as the comments of some of the more mainstream guys, particularly one Mr. Smith. Answer those questions. And McGregor, since this is your first time here on Pound for Pound Box Report, your thoughts on Ruiz's loss to one Lennox Lewis and the reaction, particularly within the UK landscape. I know it's a little bit unfair to have you speak for all in that regard, but still. First, you, Gail.
Based in Southern California as I am, we were much more familiar with Andy Ruiz. And while not a lot of us can claim to have called this at all, including me, I did not call it for Ruiz. However, those of you who read my regular column know that the headline of the preview was "No Snickering About This Fight." Yes, a play on the fact that Andy Ruiz proudly proclaims himself to be a Snickers bar addict. But the point was, do not overlook this guy. Yeah, we all have the visual. And, does he look like the prototypical heavyweight athlete that we like to see there at the top of the food chain? No, he does not. It also proves it doesn't matter when you have the skills, and more important, when you have the mental fortitude to overcome those things. We all know that in boxing, determination, drive, heart, sheer will can overcome a lot of things. And if you watched Ruiz now in the days since he won, he is as cool and collected over what was an astonishing surprise, apparently to everybody but him. And most guys, achieve a dream like this and achieve something that in sport is known even outside boxing so well. Heavyweight champion of the world. Anybody would get kind of wound up and excited about it, and it'd be perfectly understandable. Ruiz is as cool and comfortable with it as the day before he had the fight. That says a lot about him as a person, as an athlete, and a lot about why he won the fight. He believed in himself. He believed in the tools. He was mentally prepared. You have to have a strong mind and will in the ring and not let anything rattle you. And here's the study in contrast. Joshua knocks Ruiz down first. He pops down on his butt. It's one of those sort of bounce off your butt off the canvas sort of knockdowns. He got up. Things weren't looking good. He shook it right off. And the minute he got up and got his feet back under him, it was forgotten. In fact, it drove him, if anything. Contrast it with Joshua being knocked down for the first time. He was so unaccustomed to dealing with something like that. And it's far from his first knockdown, unlike Ruiz. That was his first professional knockdown. Joshua's been knocked down, but for whatever reason, he was so unprepared for being knocked down at Ruiz's hands. Yes, it rattled him physically. Ruiz landed a great shot. You know, the working theory, which I subscribe to, is that Ruiz got him with a good, solid shot to the temple, the kind that really screws up your equilibrium for the rest of the fight. But even more than that, Joshua was so screwed up in the head from what had happened to him, and perhaps the humiliation aspect of it, because of the way he had sized up and belittled Ruiz. You know, he had not taken him seriously. He had spoken to him kindly in the lead up to the fight, almost in sort of a there pat on the head condescending way, that when it happened, he couldn't recover from that either.
Yeah, let me interrupt you for a second. Your thoughts on that? His attitude before the fight, being so laudatory of him, giving him the belts. That's something champions don't do.
You know, that's what you do when you're sort of indulging a kid. You know, the pat on the head of, oh, isn't that cute? That's what I got from it. Sort of the, you know, I'm going to be nice to you because you're not a threat to me. The whole handing the belts thing over, it screamed being condescending to me. And he did that at his own peril. He telegraphed that he was being nice to Ruiz because he didn't think he had a thing to worry about. So he could afford to be magnanimous to him, nice to him, in the way you would be, you know, nice to somebody that was no threat to you. That's what I saw. And I think the flip side of that coin, and I'd love to get the feeling from our British panelists tonight, the hand-wringing going on by the British fans who are stunned by this. I mean, and rightfully so. I get it. But the excuses and we got to find some reason this happened. You know, something was wrong with Joshua. I have heard some just crazy theories about stuff wrong with him and what must have happened. You know, he wasn't mentally prepared and he got his ass beat. Bottom line, end of discussion. He needs to get back in the gym. He needs to wise up. The one comment I have heard is, you know, maybe he just got a little too comfortable being the champion, and the luxurious celebrity life may have colored his thinking a little bit. In boxing, you have got to stay hungry. And literally and figuratively, there is nobody hungrier than Andy Ruiz. He makes no apology for it. And that to me, in addition to the skills, and maybe even beyond the skills, was the key to the fight. And when you have those things going for you, you're able to marshal the skills to make it happen.
Second part of the question about some of the dismissive comments about Ruiz, particularly from certain members of the American sports press.
Well, we all know who they are, and I'm not going to dignify any of it by repeating their names. They're the same kind of people that, you know, shame somebody. I'll tell you, they're the same kind of people who shame someone like Serena Williams for being, you know, heavy, coming back from, having given birth, you know, and she's still killing it on the tennis court. What's the point of that? I have never understood that. You know, a lot of athletes have taken crap for this over the years. You know, they don't look the physical specimen, the stereotype that we all expect. You know what? It's performance that counts. It's not looks. You know, there are only a few places looks really count, and that's if you're going to be on the cover of the Sports Illustrated bathing suit issue, okay? Other than that, doesn't matter. You just need to perform. And it's absolutely the truth that some athletes perform better a little over what we consider the standard weight range. When you are as fast and as strong as Ruiz and can move that size body around like he does, who the hell cares how much he weighs? Who the hell cares? In fact, if anyone saw his appearance on the Jimmy Kimmel show last night, Kimmel asked him if he was going to lose weight before the next fight, before the rematch. And Ruiz made noise about, yeah, I think maybe I am. I think that would be a big mistake. I really do. If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Your thoughts, McGregor?
All right, I'll go.
On what specifically?
On the fight itself, the reaction from folks in your part of the world.
Yeah, okay, so the fight specifically, I'm still reeling. Andy Ruiz came in there with what I would call a masterful game plan, because he made a fighter who's supposed to fight long fight tall. He threw shots to the body. And when Joshua landed that left hook and dropped Ruiz and Ruiz got up, Joshua went into his predatorial instincts and tried to finish Ruiz off. And during that moment when he landed a big right hand, Ruiz soaked it, absorbed it, and caught him with a check left. And then he caught him with that right on the temple, as Gail just said. And that screwed up his equilibrium. He went down. For the rest of the fight, Andy Ruiz dissected, made the taller guy fight very tall, keep his chin up, kept him exposed. And whenever he had the opportunity, he got in on the inside and he messed him about. It was stunning. It was quite literally just a masterful boxing performance from a guy using his abilities to beat another guy with different abilities. It's the most basic 101 on how a small guy fights a tall guy. And he did it beautifully. When Joshua pulled out the jab every time he was going to, as you know, Joshua likes to load the jab up and then bring it back down like he's pulling on a lever. Ruiz took that step back every time Joshua went to do that, exerting energy. He knows that Joshua in the past has had gassing issues, and Klitschko didn't take advantage of that, and Povetkin couldn't take advantage of that. But Ruiz just didn't let up. He believed in himself. He used his heart, his determination, and most importantly, he used his own attributes to his advantage. Stopping Joshua in... I've only been watching boxing since 2002 because I'm relatively young. But to me, that's the biggest upset I've ever personally witnessed live. I was just absolutely awestruck at the moment. It was beautiful to see him dancing in the ring. It will live on in memory for the rest of my life. I'll be able to tell my son stories about that moment. It was truly special. And I can only say that Andy Ruiz is the unified heavyweight champion of the world, and he has the best win in the heavyweight division in the last 5 years, because he beat a prime #1 heavyweight.
I was gonna say I don't think we should take anything away from Ruiz. He deserves full credit, but there is a reason why Joshua lost that fight. I still think Ruiz, he beat him fair and square. Obviously, can't take anything away, but I would properly assess how Joshua looks in the rematch, because I still think, even though Lennox Lewis, I know this is different because that was like one, people say it's a lucky punch, but it was one punch, lost to Hasim Rahman. But after that fight, there was a lot of the word excuses does get overblown, but there was a lot of reasons why he lost that fight, his preparation, where the fight was. Now, I don't think this was on the same scale, because this wasn't, what is it? That was in South Africa. This wasn't on somewhere like in a random location like that. And at the same time, Joshua wasn't. What was it? Lennox Lewis was filming a photo shoot, a video for the film. What was it? Ocean's 11. I don't think Joshua went to that level, but he definitely didn't show Ruiz the same respect. The whole holding the belts, I think he kind of overlooked Ruiz, and the whole Wilder Fury situation, I think, got to him. How Wilder managed to announce a couple of fights with Ortiz and Fury, and how he looked against Brazil. And the worst thing that could have happened, I think, was dropping Ruiz that early. I was even thinking, for this fight, Joshua's going to have to try and box. Wilder Brazil was a completely different fight, and Ruiz is not someone who's going to get blown out in the early rounds. I've seen his fights with Joseph Parker, with Dimitrenko, and a couple of fights. I think it was Kevin Johnson, and when he was with Top Rank, and he's not the type of guy who could get blown away. I do think maybe Wilder would have a chance if he fought him, because I think Wilder hits are hard, but anyone else, I don't think they're going to knock him out with one or two shots early on. They're going to have to break him down, and Joshua just didn't show him the respect. Even when he dropped him, he should have backed off. And Ruiz did make use of all his hand speed and advantages he did have, but Joshua completely neglected his advantages, his reach, his jab. He tried fighting on the inside with the smaller guy. He tried hooking with a hooker. You don't do that. And he paid the price, and Ruiz beat him. That's what happens when you show the guy zero respect and try walking through Ruiz. Now, I don't think he completely overlooked him, but he didn't show him the same respect I think he could have shown him, like he showed Klitschko and I think even Povetkin. And he ended up getting caught and he never recovered.
That could very well be the case, but also I tend to agree with McGregor. The plan that Ruiz executed, hindsight being 2020, of course, he put in a hell of a plan in there, using his advantages, and then when he saw the opportunity, he really went balls to the wall. He fought like he didn't have a care in the world, carefree, no tension, whatever. You made use of his hand speed, made use of his jab, and again, the body. Once he got to that body, it was all wrap, and they will fight again, presumably either November and December, and we will see where it goes. We will see what kind of adjustment Joshua will make. We've spent probably over an hour on this because we have so many folks on this evening. I want to move on to the other fights on that card, and I'm going to split this card up. Going to you on this one, McGregor. Chief undercard bout. Well, no, it wasn't the chief undercard bout, but it's the bout I want to focus on next. Callum Smith versus Hassan Dam. Smith defending his super middleweight belt for the first time. Let's face it, he made mincemeat of Ndam. We knew going in that Ndam had little to no shot. He just doesn't have the size, or most importantly, the chin to deal with someone as big as Callum Smith for super middleweight. So briefly, kind of recap that fight, and let's look briefly. Let's take a kind of an in-depth look at the future for Callum Smith. A lot of people bring up Canelo Alvarez. You got Caleb Plant out there too. You got Benavidez. For me, McGregor, I know people are talking Canelo a lot, but Callum Smith is a big, strong dude with good power, and most importantly, a very, very good jab. I know people talking Canelo is one of the best pound for pound fighters in the world now, maybe number one. But based on what I've seen from Smith in this fight and the George Groves fight, I think Smith will give Canelo all that he could handle. I could see Smith beating Canelo. Your thoughts?
Well, first to recap his performance very briefly. Ndam came into that fight having been dropped by Lemieux 5 times and Quillen 5 times. We knew he had a questionable chin. He still always tries to get up, so you can only credit the man's heart. But he just walked on to left hooks and he got stopped. That's literally what the fight was. He walked on, got caught with left hooks, and the fight was over. As for the Canelo fight's interesting because Canelo, he is highly rated, highly regarded by a lot of people in terms of like the boxing annals. But in terms of Callum Smith, he is 6'4", roughly 6'4".
Yeah, 6'3" around that height. So yeah,
he comes into the ring probably weighing 180 plus pounds. He is a very big man with tremendous power. Like you said, a solid jab. He knows how to keep a fighter at range, He knows how to paw that jab out, and he knows how to stiffen it up. His feet are not very quick, but neither are Canelo's. Canelo might have the shot selection, like a better shot selection, but if Canelo's going to have to get in close, and Callum Smith's a hooker. And whenever he gets in close with Callum Smith, because I don't see him being able to out-jab Smith, he'll get caught with that check left. And that will spell danger for Canelo. I know he has a tremendous chin, but he hasn't been hit by a 168-pounder flush who is that big, that strong, and one of the biggest punchers in that division. So I'd love to see the fight take place. I think it'd be massive. I don't see Oscar risking that, personally speaking. I don't see him risking it, even though it would make Canelo pretty much iconic in a sense, being a legitimate three-weight world champion, more so because of his win over Rocky Fielding. It would solidify that three-weight status, and beating a guy that large who's the Ring Magazine champion and won the World Boxing Super Series, having annihilated Rose. But other than that, for Smith, there is Plant out there. Caleb Plant, in an interview recently on another YouTube channel, he said that right now he hasn't really been thinking about unifications. They probably won't come for another year or so, and he refuses to look past Mike Lee, so that's where he is, and that's a state of mind. David Benavidez, of course, he has to be Anthony Durrell to pick
And he
up
will.
the WBC.
And he will.
And most likely he will, but remember Andy Ruiz.
Yeah.
Anything can happen in boxing. Stranger things have happened than Anthony Durrell beating David Benavidez. However, I see Callum Smith being the best fighter in that division. I can also see them looking at possible unification with him and Billy Joe Saunders, trying to work that out somehow for a UK clash, or even having a Eubank Jr. versus Callum Smith fight.
That's a bad match. That's a bad matchup for Eubank Jr. Bad matchup.
I agree, but I can still see them doing it in the UK because Eubank Jr. is a name, Callum Smith's a name. It would give Callum Smith more publicity. These are the things that they like to do, and Matchroom would heavily like to get the Eubank fight because they know it would be a matchup. And Matchroom are reeling right now in the UK. They haven't put on very good shows in the UK recently, specifically located in the UK, and that could be a super fight this year. So I don't know exactly what they're going to do with Callum Smith. I was saying all of these things just over a year ago, pretty much, and yeah, he fought Hassan and that. So I don't know what will happen, but I will always urge for unifications, and the fight I want to see the most in that division, or for Callum Smith, will be a unification with David Benavidez straight away.
Before we move on, go to Gail, Daniel, and Jacob. Following Smith's win over and Dom, making easy work of him, what direction do you think is best for Smith?
I like I said,
this is for Daniel, Gail, and Jacob.
Ladies first.
All right. Well, at this point, really, anyone with a belt. I mean, why waste his time with anything else? I think before we get too wildly impressed, we do have to remind ourselves who the opponent was. Nevertheless, he did what he was supposed to do and then some. His power is very impressive. Yeah, it's time for him to take on, one of the other belt holders in the division. And may the best man win. And I don't care who it is. Benavidez, that's fine. I think you're correct, though, that Oscar's going to think long and hard before letting that happen. But, if he does, hey, good for him.
There's nearly $300 million for them not to not have that fight happen. Straight away, I'll go to you, Daniel, and then you, Jacob. What direction do you think Callum Smith should go next?
It's going to be something that's going to be very weird to look into because, hey, he's pretty big for a super middleweight. And one of the things that you have to worry about when it comes into it is the same thing that Canelo went through when he's trying to do the 155 deal, which is Should he stay in that division, or he should go up? I have a feeling like if you're gonna try to unify, you're gonna unify now, and you got to do it fairly soon. So get it as much people as possible, and try to get Benavides, try to get Plank, try to work out something with the PBC guys, and ultimately you have to do that because then the light heavyweight division is going to be a different landscape fairly soon.
Your thoughts, Jacob?
Same. I'm along the same lines of thinking. You know, he's the champion. I know that the consensus is probably going to be, because the money is with Canelo, and Canelo's a big name. So if he can beat a Canelo, or even stop him, knock him out, I mean, that's a big feather to put in your cap. So, but I don't think he's going to get that fight right away. So just being realistic, I think he should try to unify, like Gail was saying, with one of the other champions. The problem being, though, that they have fights, I believe, already scheduled. So he's going to have to wait a little bit. So, but I mean, I agree with you on what you were saying earlier. I think Smith gives Canelo all kinds of problems, mainly because Canelo won't have the normal weight advantages that he tends to have in his fights. And like you said, Smith has a very good jab. He works the body very well. He's got power, and the guy's, I mean, he's huge. He's like a fucking cruiserweight. But yeah, I mean, I'm excited to hopefully see him back sooner rather than later.
I want to read some comments in the chat from the YouTube chat before we move on. In our discussion about Joshua and Ruiz, and I mentioned why people are just so dismissive of Ruiz and was not so dismissive of Big Baby going in. Lisa said that the thing with Big Baby, that was just part of promotion and Big Baby's mouth. Lisa also said she doesn't think that Joshua is chinny, that when you get hit on the temple area, you have that kind of reaction, you never recover. He goes down like Klitschko. Thomas Riley, thanks for joining us in the YouTube chat as well. He said that with Joshua, it's a mind issues, muscles, yes, but it is more in his head. Hamed, who was on the show, had some comments about Ruiz as well, and how it was ridiculous that he was so underrated going in. For those who are listening to us in the chat, and let me say this, Lisa, for those who do not know, Lisa used to be a regular listener of Pound for Pound Box Report. She has been away due to some personal issues, particularly with regarding her mother. I want to say publicly here that she's reporting. She told me that her mother is doing a lot better. So I want to say to Lisa, on behalf of everybody here at Pound for Pound Box Report, one, thanks for rejoining us. Thanks for listening again. And we just want to give a congratulations on the fact that your mother is doing better, and continue progress and better health for your mother. And again, thanks for listening to us again. Glad your mother is doing a whole lot better than she was. Going on to some other fights here. We've mentioned this, Gail, over and over the past few weeks, over the past month or so, how unification seems to be an in thing. Another unification on the line when it comes to women's boxing. This one was at lightweight, all the belts on the line, unification undisputed for the lightweight title between Katie Taylor and Delfine Persoon. I talked about how Delfine Persoon, at the very least, Gail, was going to give Katie Taylor a really, really tough fight. And I was leaning towards Persoon when previewing the fight. Taylor got the decision via close points. I think 2 points on one card, maybe 1 point on the third card. But having watched the fight, I don't care that she got the decision. Persoon won the fight. Persoon fought like a mad woman. Persoon took the fight to Taylor, was in her grill all night long. And you have argued over and over again how there needs to be 3-minute rounds in boxing. Could not be truer than this fight here, because towards the end of this fight, Persoon, she was dog walking Taylor. And if this was 3 minutes rounds, I'm convinced she would have stopped Taylor. Your thoughts on the fight, Gail?
I absolutely agree with you. Down the line, 100%. And to that last point, women's boxing is fighting literally to be taken seriously, and it's gaining ground, but it will never get all the way there until they fight equal to the men 3-minute rounds. Now, there are people who argue that women are more prone to head damage and concussion, and therefore the reason for the 2-minute rounds. Okay, if there's some scientific evidence to that, I'd like to see it. But let's face it, boxing's a dangerous sport either way. I mean, who are we kidding?
I mean, they used to say the same. They used to say the same thing about women running long distance, and those quote unquote rumors and those theories was dispelled decades ago. So you know how that goes.
There is a line of medical thinking about the so-called pink concussion. I'm going to leave that aside. If there's real feeling about that, then if there is an argument being made there by sanctioning bodies or officials, all right, then let the women fight 10 rounds, but they need to be 3 minutes. We have more inexperienced younger male fighters fight fewer rounds, but they still fight 3-minute rounds. If it's 4 rounds, 6 rounds, 8 rounds, whatever it is. And the other thing that it would help is that the knockout rate would go up. The knockout rate in women's boxing, relatively speaking to the men, is very low. Part of it is a strength issue, and it's just simple biology and muscle mass. But the other is the lack of the remaining minute. And someday, somebody who is a far more skilled statistics expert and mathematician than I am will go and compare men's boxing and knockouts. And if you removed any knockouts achieved by men in the 3rd minute and recalculated that knockout percentage, I wonder if it wouldn't be closer to the women. Be that as it may, all that aside, that's a secondary discussion. This was a barn burner fight. Persoon is a police officer full-time in her day job. And, you know, she's been out on the streets all these years. Nothing rattles her. She is tough. And like Andy Ruiz, in a way, even though she is, you know, she's had 44 fights, only 1 loss. She had only 1 of the belts. She was still the underdog because she's fought all her fights except for 1 of them in Belgium, and they've all been in Europe. It was her first American fight, first fight at a really, really big venue. She was considered the underdog, but she's bigger than Taylor. She's stronger than Taylor. She used that size. She had that go for broke mentality, the nothing to lose mentality. It's so important in boxing. We saw it over and over on Saturday night. And she whipped up on Taylor, and Taylor was not real prepared to take it. Once Taylor got her wits back about her, she did a lot better, you know, as the fight went on, particularly in the middle rounds. But on my scorecard, Persoon edged it. I know one of our panelists, Jacob Rivera, had much wider scorecards than I did. And there was one of the 3 judges' scorecards that was a draw. And because they both gave and took so much damage aggregate overall, I could have lived with a draw. But take one look at Katie Taylor after that fight. I have never in her career, amateur or professional, seen her take that kind of damage. She looked worked. And that told me a lot about exactly how beat up she was in that fight. You know, judging it after the fact, looking at her, It was astonishing. I hope Taylor is true to her word about giving Persoon an immediate rematch. Again, just like Ruiz and Joshua. And hey, put that rematch on the Ruiz and Joshua undercard. Why not? Let's do it. Great introduction to women's boxing for those who either still think they don't like seeing women fight or are just simply unfamiliar. Very, very happy this fight got that visibility and got the attention that it did on this card, despite the somewhat controversial results.
Height, reach, activity, and want. Height, reach, activity, and want. That's the advantages I thought that Persoon had coming in, and it showed itself during the fight. And I'm going to open up the discussion to the fellas in the panel. Gail mentioned that Persoon was the stronger fighter. What makes that more surprising is that Persoon, this fight was at lightweight, yet Persoon weighed under 131 pounds. She was basically 3 pounds lighter than Katie Taylor, but yet she was the physically stronger fighter throughout. I'll open up the discussion. I'll go to you, Jacob, first, since you had the wider scorecards. You can follow up McGregor and Daniel. Well, I see Daniel had left. He'll be back, but you can follow up McGregor. I had, while I had Persoon winning, I felt Persoon was going to win coming in. Most had Taylor winning and probably winning comfortably. Your level of surprise at the fight and how the fight went, and the fact that Persoon made Taylor so uncomfortable in there from a physical and mental perspective.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, it was a really good fight. I was watching it with my brother, and he's I would say he's more of a casual fan, and he really enjoyed the fight. He was saying like, "Oh man, that was a really good fight." But he also, like me, had Persoon winning. I thought, Katie Taylor has the overall better skills. I mean, she just is a very skilled fighter. But what Persoon was able to do was to put Taylor in a position where she was basically just coming forward, kind of like overpowering her, almost ragdolling her in a sense, and just continue to throw punches. And Taylor was quite visibly tired, but like you were saying before, like make her uncomfortable. So take her out of her, what would be like a sparring session where she can, utilize her skills and put her in a place where she didn't want to be, whether it was against the ropes or just like, being rough and tough. So I think that's what, in my opinion, won her a majority of the rounds. I could score the 7-3, maybe 6-4 at the most. But I'm not surprised that they gave it to Taylor, because that's like, that's the story, that's the narrative. Most people, most of the hardcores know who Katie Taylor is, and um, I think that's kind of, unfortunately, in boxing, when it goes to the judges, they can be swayed by the crowd and whatnot, and the crowd was definitely behind her, um, and promotions and everything. So, but even her demeanor at the end of the fight didn't seem like she thought she won the fight. She looked a little worried, but hopefully, like Gail said, hopefully that they'll run it back again. Hopefully, I mean, it's a championship fight. Even besides the 3-minute rounds, I think they should be. I think all championship fights should be 12 rounds. I'd even be opening to, I was going to write an article about this, but bringing back the 15 round fights. Um, you know, it was a good performance by Persoon. I know she was disappointed. I think if she would have stayed in the ring, though, she would have got some validation when when they do the interviews. A lot of times the crowds will see who they thought won the fight, and they'll cheer for them. And so it can kind of give her, a little bit of validation in the sense that, she did win that fight. or at least a lot of people think so. But good fight for women's boxing. I'm glad it was featured on the main card, and hopefully they run it back again.
I'm going to you, McGregor. To Jacob's point, Persoon was devastated after the fight left the ring. No doubt she felt she won. Taylor, even though she got the decision, you can see in her face and her eyes that maybe she probably think that she'd be lucky if she gets it. Your reaction to what you saw, is this a case of the A side fighter getting the benefit of the doubt?
Yeah, in my opinion, completely. Look, you would think that I'd have some bias, and I did have some bias coming into the fight. Like, I believe Persoon could beat Katie up, but you would think I'd have bias on my scorecard. Not really. I scored at 8-2 for Delfine.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I thought she beat the crap out of her. I didn't think any of Katie's punches had any effect. I think she kept getting dog walked. She got smacked up. She got pushed around. It was like it was just Delfine was like a throwback to like a prime Ricky Hatton in a weird way. She just didn't stop. And Katie did the worst thing she could have done. She tried to fight fire with fire, and she was getting outlanded in those exchanges. A lot of her shots were catching on the shoulders, and yeah, I felt Delfine just beat her. Just beat her up and beat her up. And I felt like when I went to the cards and stuff, I felt like there might be a robbery. And I feel it's a robbery. I don't look at this as like a massive accomplishment, because I feel this is complete injustice. And I hope she gives her the rematch. And Katie needs to do what I said that she needed to do, which was box, use her feet, move around. Like, try and stay away from Delfine as much as she can, use her jab, not get into a dogfight with her. She's taller than her, she has a larger reach, and she fought like a woman possessed. Like, she was fighting with everything she wanted.
She had the Josh Warrington attitude that you saw against Lee Selby.
Yeah, completely. That's literally it. And the other part of it is like, if you want to get more people interested in boxing, I completely agree. And like in women's boxing, an extra minute in the rounds would go a long way, or the extra 2 rounds in championship fights would go a long way. But one thing for sure is people need to watch that fight, because that was an absolute classic. They punched and punched and punched. It was absolutely phenomenal to watch. It was non-stop. It was constant. And they showed more heart and determination than 99% of most male boxers do in that fight.
Right.
So I can only say that like, outside of the decision, which I think is a robbery, personally speaking, I genuinely think this is a great advertisement for women's boxing in terms of how good women's boxing actually is. And as Gail said earlier, an extra minute in each round, we would see a much higher knockout ratio happen. Because that was, 20 minutes? That would have been after the 7th round. Katie would have been like that. She would have had 3 more rounds of that with 9 minutes. I think she'd have got stopped. Another round, I think she'd have stopped. And if you looked at Delfine, she looked like she could do another 12 rounds of that at 2 minutes. She didn't look tired at all. She just kept going. I don't know what's in her system or what's in her heart, but the woman was obsessed to win that. And I can understand her devastation of feeling robbed and feeling hard done by the A side, because obviously Eddie's putting a lot of stock into Katie, because she's pretty much like in Europe, she's the face of female boxing and has been for quite a long time, amateur coming into pro. In Ireland, she's near enough iconic. Like, people forget that when she won Olympic gold and came back to Ireland on O'Connell Street, there was 850,000 people there. We only have a population of 2.8 million in the Republic of Ireland. That's nearly a third of our entire population. We're lining the streets for her gold medal parade. So I can understand. And yeah, I just felt it was a fantastic fight. And I want to see the rematch because I want to see another great fight.
Yeah. This was elite matchup indeed, and let's just hope, let's hope that Hearn and Matchroom do the right thing and pit these ladies in there against each other again. And as Gail said, why not? Let's have it on the undercard of Joshua or Ruiz, excuse me, Ruiz Joshua too. It would be fitting. It would be fitting. Last couple fights I want to talk about. I want to lean on you, McGregor. I wasn't able to see these fights. Josh Kelly versus Ray Robinson, Buatsi versus um, Buatsi versus Periban. Last week we talked about Josh Kelly. I gave some high praise to him, but from all indications I read, it was a draw, by the way, against Ray Robinson. Against Ray Robinson, he didn't look that great. Whereas Buatsi basically did what he was supposed to do. Uh, I think Buatsi is a champion in waiting. I think skill for skill that he's a better fighter than Yard. Skill for skill, he just doesn't hasn't proven it yet against had the competition just hasn't been great. Put it that way. And he did what he had to do and dominated Periban from what I was reading on the night. So I'll just get the conversation started with you, and for everybody else who watched the fights, please comment as well. Did we overrate Josh Kelly, and your thoughts on Joshua Buatsi?
Okay. As for overrating Josh Kelly, I didn't. Um, I'll be just very
I'll say
brutally honest.
did I overrate Josh?
I
Am
think
I
you did.
guilty of overrating Josh Kelly based on
Yeah,
from what I've read in terms of how he performed against Robinson?
yeah. I mean, we can talk about the result being a draw. He lost that fight.
Mm.
He did lose that fight. Robinson even changed Kelly's mentality in the 8th round. He stopped doing the low hand stuff and he went into a high guard and went onto the back foot very quickly. And he wasn't throwing shots. He was getting tagged. Robinson was the come forward fighter in this fight too. He just kept going at him. He was popping out the jab. He was landing combinations up through the center with uppercuts and hooks to the body. And Kelly was doing that flash in the pan stuff that he likes to do, where he's trying to pretend to be like Prince Nassim or Roy Jones, where he
Yeah.
pops out that one shot. But that one shot was being met by 5 or 6 shots from Robinson. Robinson had high activity in this fight. And one thing I've noticed about Kelly that I really don't like is that he tends to throw 10 or 11 or 12 feints before he even throws a shot. Now, I don't mind you feinting if there's a method to the madness, like with Tyson Fury throwing 12 or 13 to stop his opponent from throwing shots. But when you're doing 12 or 13 feints and your opponent is standing there doing absolutely nothing, it doesn't make any sense. It might look good to someone who doesn't understand, but in essence, you were looking fidgety, you were looking ponderous, and you look like you don't know what you're doing other than trying to show off. And that's the issue. He isn't a natural athlete like Roy Jones. He isn't the Prince Nassim. People were saying in England shades of Prince Nassim. He looked more like shades of Prince Patel. In all
Mm.
honesty, the way he just popped out the jab, like when he would try and leap through it, and then he'd get caught with an uppercut and then a jab to the body, and Robinson get out, and then he'd get him up against the ropes, and Kelly would like move left and right and everything with his head, trying to look flashy, and he was getting caught with shots in the chest. It was silly. I didn't understand it. I've never understood it. Even in his last fight, he was throwing. I literally counted in his last fight against the Polish kid, Przemysław Ranowski, I think his name is, the 17-0 prospect who had before anybody. He literally did 41 feints before throwing a jab in round 3. I don't understand it. Like, if you're going to do that stuff, do it with a method to the madness. Don't just do it for the sake of trying to look cool, because eventually you're going to look ridiculous. And that's what happened. And I think Ray Robinson was robbed, brutally robbed, because I think he beat Kelly badly. And I was in a hangout commentating on the fight with some other guys like Beats and Nauda, and they were literally saying Nauda had the fight a draw, but everybody else all of us, and we're from the UK, all of us, we all had Ray Robinson winning. Be it 8-2, 7-3, 6-4. One person had 9-1. So that'll kind of tell you. I felt it was bad. As for Buatsi, he beat Periban. Periban was coming off of a 2-year layoff and a defeat. He handled his business, hooked him out of there, jabbed him out of there, and stopped him. Buatsi's on a different level. Like who are they going to put him in with? Who's going to fight with him? I think he's ready for I think he's ready for Silva Barrera if he has the fitness regime already. Like he should be in there with a top 15 guy like that. He shouldn't be fighting a Periban, but they're trying to build him low risk. But he's already ready for the top 15. And like you said, he's champion in waiting, in my opinion, too. I think he's legit. So humble, so calm, so collected. He's so patient in the ring, too. Like, it's beautiful to see.
I might go to you, Jacob and Gail. If you were able to watch the Kelly Robinson fight or the Buatsi and Periban fight, your thoughts, please.
So I saw the highlights of the Kelly fight, and from the looks of it, it looks like he lost. It looks like he maybe won a couple early rounds, but then he was getting basically outworked and clocked. And one of his biggest problems, in which might lead to him getting knocked out badly, is his defense. He tends to drop his hands and tries to dodge with his head, with just head movement. And we've seen many people in the past that if they don't keep their hands up and they just rely on that, eventually they get caught. And so he might be a knockout waiting to happen. And I didn't get to see the other fight.
Your thoughts, Gail?
Well, it's kind of funny if you say, I think you said you saw highlights of did you say you saw highlights of the Kelly and Robinson fight? There were no highlights of that fight. There were none. Horrible, horrible fight. Just even as a devoted fan of the sport, you sit in front of those and think, oh, can I get up and leave? I mean, it's just boring as hell, and absolutely good points already made about the way Kelly fools around in the ring with the feints and the he thinks he's being flashy. No, stop it. Just get on. No, get on with it. You either have the skills or you don't. Don't jerk me around and waste my time. No, all killer, no filler. Get to the point. And Robinson, while it was not an overwhelming victory, not one that he could not be denied, he did win the fight. I would say, however, it was close. It was close. And, tie goes to the runner in baseball, tie in boxing goes to the hometown guy. But it certainly didn't make me feel too enthusiastic to see him again. Now, to the point of have we overrated him, I will give any fighter one bad night. They all have them. Some get through it, some will themselves through it, some don't, and then they have to come back and recover. In Kelly's case, I want to see whether this is how he is, in which case I'm done with him, or he gets his head back on straight, he gets back on the grind, and he delivers a decent fight next time. I will give him one more chance. I'm not a one-strike person without very good reason, but he is on my bubble. Buatsi, on the other hand, admittedly, not a very challenging opponent, but he looked impressive, as expected. No reason not to look forward to seeing what he can do in his next fight when he's challenged a little more.
I'll go back to you, McGregor, for this final comment. Conor Ben, in the past, late last year, early this year, he called out Kelly, said he wanted to fight him. Given what we saw, not what we saw, but what you witnessed and what last weekend, is that fight more plausible now?
The fight's plausible. Well, I don't feel this much. I don't rate Kelly, but like Conor Ben, I rate even less. like, it's not badness in me towards Conor Benn. It's just Kelly had a very tough fight with like a guy who just had a draw with Kavaliauskas. I mean, he's not a bad fighter, Ray Robinson. I know he's negative and people don't enjoy watching him, but he is difficult to fight against. He's long, he's rangy, he's southpaw. Conor Benn. I mean, this guy lost to somebody nearly no one ever heard of, and got a robbery win or whatever it was. I can't remember. It was so long ago, and I just wanted to forget about it because it was so terrible. Like, from Conor. I think Conor's an accident waiting to happen, but I feel the same way with Josh Kelly. I feel like Kelly will get stopped at world level by a guy, and I think getting out of the David Avanesian fight was fantastic. But when Conor fought against Paynaud and he won the first fight, he lost that fight. Everyone knows it. And Paynaud he's a perennial journeyman. Like, he's got a record of like what, 6 wins, 6 losses, and like 2 or 3 draws or something like that. They'll probably make that fight, but I reckon Kelly will win comfortably if he doesn't piss around. Excuse my language.
No problem, no problem.
Yeah, he needs to stop joking. He just needs to stop joking, but he'd beat Conor. Conor's not really a great fighter. He's just name, really. He's got the Benn family name.
Shout out to Sector in the chat, Sector 23, who said that Katie Taylor, she got beat up. Overhand said in the chat that Kelly, he looked awful. Said he looks like a bootleg Sergio Martinez. That's kind of funny. Let's move on to some news here. One main news thing I want to talk about that broke today. Going to you, Jacob, then you can follow up Gail and McGregor. We've talked junior welterweight, world boxing super, not junior welterweight, super lightweight, depends on how you want to call the division. The final of the World Boxing Super Series lightweight tournament between Prograis and Taylor. That's going to happen later on this year. The 2 fighters of note who didn't take part in that tournament: Maurice Hooker, who holds the WBO belt at 140, Ramirez, who holds the WBC belt. Looks like they're going to fight each other in a unification bout in July, the 27th of July, I believe. I'll start with you, Jacob. Gail and McGregor, you can follow up. Your thoughts on that?
I think I like it. I like this fight. I think it'll be an interesting fight because Ramirez, I think, is a little bit suspect in the sense that, I mean, I'm not saying he's not skilled, but he seems to have some deficiencies and he's beatable. And then Hooker,
given his last fight, which he arguably lost.
Yeah, and then Hooker, he's had, I think he's had some performances where he didn't look spectacular, and he ended up coming back in those fights. But I think it was Salcido that he kind of had some trouble with at first, but then he ended up coming back and stopping him. But it's a good unification fight. That's what I always want to see is first, number one is fighters to stay active and get the best fights that they can, so they could stay in the ring and stay sharp. Second is if they can fight in their prime, fight somebody else in their prime, another either top ranked guy or not the promotion, just like a highly ranked guy, or a champion to unify, then that's like the best case scenario. So I'm glad they're doing this. I'm not sure where they're doing this. I don't know if they're going to Fresno again or whatnot, but I like it. I like this fight.
The fight is going to be in Texas, so takes Ramirez out of his comfort zone. There's been a lot made of the fact that Ramirez fights, at home in the Central Valley of California in Fresno, where he can put 15,000 people in the seats up there. Very impressive, certainly. But I think when Ramirez comes out of his little cocoon there up there in familiar, friendly territory down in Texas against Hooker, I think you're right, Jacob. I think he's certainly skilled. He's put on good performances, but
He's tough. He's tough. I mean, he
is
grits it out.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think I think he is going to look diminished out of his home environment in a stranger surrounding, unless he really, really trains well and toughens up. It's going to be a good competitive fight. And it is a fight that either guy can win, especially if, just like we talked about, his opponent has, one of those off nights. I think the guy who might have the off night is Ramirez. Um, it's rare that I tie a fighter so strongly to his home base as part of the reason for his success. But in Ramirez's case, it's really true. Aram has kept him up there in Fresno and made people to come to him for a reason. So going to be very interesting to see, how he fares in a what will for him be a foreign environment, which is interesting because if it's in Texas, he is going to have a Mexican and Latino crowd in theory pulling for him unless they go with their local Texas guy. So audience dynamics are going to be interesting. It's a good matchup. And hey, for a midsummer fight when things, are hot outside and the boxing action sort of dies down a little bit, I'm really glad to see this on the calendar. I think the date's July 27th, as I recall.
The crowd mix might be a lot like the Spence Garcia fight.
Yeah.
Spence from Texas, but Garcia having that Mexican fan base also come out.
Absolutely. Excellent call. Exactly. Yeah.
Another factor could be the issue of weight with Hooker, and I'll go to you on this one, McGregor. Hooker, who had a lot of troubles getting down to weight for his last fight. I think he missed the weigh in. He could have those weight issues again. That aside, your thoughts on these two gentlemen getting in the ring again? Unification. Maybe they're learning from the ladies in terms of it's okay for the best to fight the best.
Yeah, it is. Right now we've got, if this is genuinely going to happen, we've got two unification fights in one division taking place within a similar time frame, like within 4 months of each other, which means Undisputed could be on the card soon. It also shows that all of the fighters in this division, they are willing to fight each other. And 140 is doing it big again because we could be on the cusp of Undisputed again, which would be tremendous. But yeah, the style matchup is very interesting, especially with Ramirez if he's fighting in Texas, coming out of Fresno. That'll be interesting. Hooker, obviously, I believe he has by far the larger reach, if I'm not mistaken. I think he's got an 80-inch reach or something like that, and he's tall. And Ramirez, he likes to exchange. And I don't know if he wants to exchange with Hooker. I think Hooker's power is underrated. I think he could stop Ramirez if that's the case, or at least rock him or drop him. I don't know who will win that fight just because of Ramirez's volume. I think it's just a great fight to have happen. I can't really add anything onto it, man. It's just a very good fight. That's all it is. It's a unification fight between two fighters with a good style matchup. It's what we want to see.
Absolutely. Before we move on to some preview some fights, any other news development that you heard of? Gail, Jacob, McGregor?
Thankfully, no. I don't think my heart could take it. But I am enjoying seeing Andy Ruiz do the media circuit, and just hear all the comments and, know that everybody proved everybody wrong. And he just sits there with that Cheshire cat grin, like, yep, told you all. Yeah, told you. Good for him. As far as I know, his trainer, Manny Robles, was right back in Norwalk on Monday, back in the gym, waiting for his youngins. And, interesting article that I recommend highly if you can find it, folks. It's in the Los Angeles Daily News by Mark Whitaker, talking to Robles after Ruiz won. And, Robles lost quite a few fighters out of his stable this year. Oscar Valdez left, Michael Conlon left, some other guys have left. So for him to win with Ruiz was especially sweet for him. And you've got to give Robles a lot of credit for that win as well as Ruiz. He really has stuck with him. He's always trained him hard and believed in him. And it bears mentioning he deserves some of the credit too.
Some more comments in the chat here in terms of the Josh Kelly discussion that we had. Overhead said that does Josh Kelly know he's in the same division as Crawford, Thurman, Spence, Porter, and Danny Garcia? He says he's got to throw that style in the trash if he wants to, if he even wants to compete in that division. What was you going to say, Jacob?
I was going to say, I know Daniel's not here, but a shout out, we were talking about as far as news. He had relayed some information to us that I guess the next season of the World Boxing Super Series is going to be one of the divisions will be light heavyweight, and supposedly all 4 champions will be participating.
Yeah, that's the hot rumor. That's the hot rumor I'm hearing. I'm going to look into that further after the recording of the live show. But if that happens, I mean that's what's up. That's stuff like that is what's needed in boxing.
These World Boxing Super Series have been fantastic. The first season was fantastic. The second season is wrapping up, and that's been fantastic. And this goes back to when they did the was it super middleweight tournament with Ward. I know it wasn't World Boxing Super Series, but it was a similar kind of format where they had a lot of the top guys, and we were able to get unifications and kind of a recognized number one.
Yeah, I am bowing down in an I not worthy vow to that if it happens. And it's doable with all the belt holders. None of them are so locked up across promotional lines that it couldn't happen as long as they want to participate. The one other item of note is the injury to Tony Harrison.
Yes.
That mentioned. His fight is being postponed due to an injury, which is really a shame with Charlo, his rematch. So it's still on the books. We're just going to have to wait a little longer.
Yes. Hopefully he can. I think he injured his ankle. Correct me if I'm wrong, Gail.
Yeah. He somehow either sprained an ankle. It's not a break, as far as I know. Although, unfortunately, soft tissue injuries to the ankle could sometimes be a lot worse. So I hope it was minor, and I hope it's an issue of just simply staying off of it, giving it time to let it heal. Let's hope he doesn't rush back in the ring too quickly from an injury like that.
Yeah, I agree. Overhand in the live YouTube chat about the rumor World Boxing Super Series light heavyweight tournament. He says in the chat every fight will literally be 50-50 if it happens. Final word on that rumor, McGregor. If it goes down, salivating.
If what goes down, the World Boxing Super Series?
Yeah, light heavyweight tournament.
Salivating isn't the word. The light heavyweight division up at the top, I think everyone will agree, like it's arguably the best division of boxing in terms of the champions, because nobody can predict. Nobody will be able to predict that 100% without casting favorites. Like you've got Beterbiev, you've got Bivol, Sergey Kovalev, you've got Alexander Vojtic, you've got Marcus Brown, maybe Anthony Yarde if he's willing to actually take a fight. You've other guys in there who could be there's just so many different people. You can still bring a Leader Alvarez and Padre Jack into it. It's just a phenomenal tournament. Like undisputed at light heavyweight would be amazing. We've been crying out for it for years with Kovalev and Adonis Stevenson, and we never got there. And this tournament, if we're able to bring it to us, it would destroy everything next year. And it really would.
And let's give some credit to one guy out of that group you just mentioned, Alexander Gvozdyk, by lifting that long-held hostage WBC belt out of that division, liberating it from Stevenson, although sadly, hurting Stevenson in the process. Not his fault. I'm glad to see him recovering. That said, that out of the way, now it is truly all 4 belts in play. And what's also such a benefit, there have been some odd rumors of financial issues among some of the promotional players involved. Full disclosure, I've done work with both Main Events and World of Boxing. Main Events promotes Sergey Kovalev, World of Boxing promotes Dmitry Bivol. We've also heard about something going on with Yard. Whether or not those are true, and I do not know for a fact whether any of those issues are true behind the scenes, this would solve that problem or whatever multiple problems are out there if the World Boxing Super Series takes over as the umbrella promoter for everybody and brings all those interests back together. I mean, really, yeah, we all need to get out a drool bucket because it's going to get ugly. We're so excited about it.
Let's move on to preview some fights here. Couple of fights of noteworthy, I should say. Asterisks to the word noteworthy when it comes to one particular fight. First fight in a design card, headline of the design card in NYC, as Triple G making his comeback fight after the Canelo his comeback fight after the Canelo loss debut on design, fighting Steve Rolls, and I'm giving this fight a major eye roll as a result. I get why he's fighting Steve Rolls because of what's coming up, but still, and anybody who wants to touch this, begin the conversation, please do. But really, Steve Rolls, I know it's in the cards, is in the plans for Canelo and Triple G and Canelo to fight each other later on this year. But they're going to give us Steve Rolls as a setup, really?
This has been, but hasn't this been Triple G's kind of MO in a way? He's, before it was, nobody wanted to fight him, but then like as they started to come out, then he was still fighting, his not the top guys, whether it was Monroe or Martirosyan, like in between. And I know part of that wasn't his fault, but we could have saw a Munguia fight if they would have approved that fight. Which would have been interesting, I think. But I think it's a business, and so they're obviously trying to set up that big money fight with Canelo. So if they can give Triple G a layup, it just sets up for that third fight, because they want to make money.
I'll go to you, Gail. Again, Steve Rolls. Maybe this is because of the transition with Triple G moving on from Abel Sanchez to Jonathan Banks as a trainer, but still, Steve Rolls, man, Steve Rolls.
Oh my Lord, calm down, Mr. Rolls.
And see, Stephen A. Smith, this is the kind of fighter you criticize, not Andy Ruiz. Proceed, Gail.
Hey, I get it. Steve Rolls, he's a paper tiger. Yeah, he's undefeated, but I invite you to look at his record in BoxRec. It's not exactly inspiring. However, nevertheless, this is Golovkin's first of a 6-fight deal for DAZN. They're not going to set him up with the toughest fight on the planet. Rolls is a legitimate opponent. He is not a taxi driver from Tijuana. I get it. He's not even the king of the North because Golovkin already beat that guy. His name is David Lemieux, right? He already beat David Lemieux. So the king of the North already got taken care of. But nevertheless, what is interesting? Two things. Number one, Rolls is promoted by Lou DiBella. When the whole Canelo PED tainted meat thing blew up, who was touted as a possible replacement and argued that he was the next mandatory. Well, that would have been Derevyanchenko. Who promoted Derevyanchenko? Who was making the big noise? Lou DiBella. Well, he didn't get that fight. DiBella promotes Steve Rolls. Don't we all think this is the consolation prize to DiBella because his guy didn't get the shot a year ago in May? I do. I think that's part of it, right? And, the other thing going on here that's interesting is, of course, now everyone could say, well, okay, yeah, Rolls, he's an underdog, but look what happened last weekend. And it's also at Madison Square Garden, Everybody's got a puncher's chance. So you have to admit, I get it, Michael, and I heard the tone of your voice, point taken. I get it. But there is that little bit of extra intrigue now, which is kind of funny. However, when we had the conference call with these guys yesterday, somebody asked both Steve Rolls and Lou DiBella by the way, by background, Rolls is from Toronto.
And the Raptors are kicking the Warriors' butt right now. Go ahead.
So they asked Lou DiBella, "Are you keeping Drake away from Steve Rolls?" And he said, "I don't care if Steve wants to go to a concert after the fight, but right now I'm keeping him the fuck away from that guy," which was quite funny. So, there's a lot of moving parts in play here. And it's the right matchup considering all the factors involved. We got a chance to get a good close-up look at Golovkin working with Banks at a very small invitation media workout in Santa Monica last week, which I got to attend. And then about a half dozen of us got to sit down with Golovkin prior to that. What I was struck by and wrote about in a column that I published today, along with interview video and some workout video, is how much lighter-hearted Golovkin seems. Like the weight of the world is finally off him. The whole mess with Canelo behind him. He's not thinking about what might happen in the future. And he seems completely re-energized working with Banks. And Banks is a very different kind of guy. We also got a chance to talk to him. I've always enjoyed Jonathan as a person and as a fighter. He spent his time in the ring, both at cruiserweight and heavyweight. And he trains in the ring with Golovkin differently. Now, can he teach a 37-year-old fighter a lot of brand new things? It's a stretch. And he sure as hell can't do it in just one training camp. It's not going to happen. But watching him move and ask Golovkin in workouts to throw called out combinations was very different than I've seen him do with Sanchez. Also, Banks lets Golovkin hit him because he is a lot bigger. And I had to take pause. I mean, he was letting Golovkin land left hooks to the body. I think Golovkin was, pulling up short, but still he hit him. It was very funny. They interact in a much more fluid combination punch-oriented style. I'm going to be very, very interested to see how that all plays out. And they clearly have a very good connection with each other. They appear extremely comfortable in the ring. And it is almost more of a fighter working with a fighter mentality. It's no longer the father-son sort of relationship that everyone, made much of between Sanchez and Golovkin. It's more like, my experienced older brother working with me. It's a very interesting dynamic, one worth watching on Saturday. Is it going to go out? Yeah, maybe.
I've read that Golovkin is looking physically different too, a little bit more streamlined and ripped. Was that the case?
Absolutely. He said, it was interesting. He said, "I feel young again." And he looked it. And he is stripped down. It's interesting. This is a catchweight fight at 164. So it's not like he's got to worry about making weight. And the truth is, Golovkin's never struggled to make 160. He makes 160 pretty easily. He pretty much eats what he wants. He works hard. The weight's just not an issue for him. So very interesting to see him. He did look ripped. I invite you to look at the workout video. It's all over the place. It is at my column tonight at Communities Digital News. Yeah, he looked good. And he looked fresher and he looked more mobile. And I do think that's exactly what he needs.
Quick word on this fight, McGregor.
It's crap.
That's what I call getting to the point.
Y'all can say you get it. I don't. Like Steve Rolls, former National American Junior middleweight champion. fought earlier in his career at super middleweight. His best win is probably a split decision win against Nicholson. I mean, I don't get it. I'll never understand. I'll never understand why a guy who's ranked on what most people use as the main pound for pound list inside the top 10 is fighting against a guy who 99.5% of boxing fans, like hardcore boxing fans, have never heard of. I've seen the guy fight twice. Once was on a Regis Prograde card. I can't even remember who he was fighting. And I know Baranchik was also on that card. But he doesn't even have a very good job. Like, it kind of reminds me of when Areola was fighting against that random PBC fighter on the undercard of Spence Garcia. Who was he fighting against?
Be
Or
careful.
Pierre
That's Gail's
Augustine?
guy. That's Gail's guy.
Don't you give me a whole hard problem about my man, the Nightmare.
Yeah, it was a nightmare to watch him fight. And it's the same situation. It's just a guy who has a record like Huey Fury against Chris Norad recently. It's a complete shambles. The fact that they at one point
Were you talking
ruled
about
out
Harper? Curtis
no, that's
Harper?
Curtis. No, that's another kettle of fish. This is just ridiculous. Like the fact that like this guy is fighting against Gennady Golovkin when they wouldn't allow Munguia to fight Golovkin because he might get hurt, but they'll throw in a guy that no one's ever heard of. I don't understand. I think it's stupid. It's not like he's fighting a young prospect who's coming up. Rolls is like 35, am I right?
Yeah.
Yeah. He 17-0 who's never fought anybody. Like anybody at all. It's not like he has like 5 defeats to top guys, which makes him more seem credible. It's like, oh yeah, well he's been beat up by like Lemieux and he's been beat up by Saunders and he's been beat up by Andrade. Yeah, he's durable. Nah, the best opponent is Nicholson. I don't even know who that is. I don't even know who his best opponent is. So I'll never get it. I think the only thing I can understand about this fight is wanting to see Golovkin fight and put on a performance. I guess maybe just try and get some casual intrigue for the third fight, or the fourth fight, or the 14th fight with Canelo. That'll evidently happen. But yeah, I'm not really interested in it. It's gonna be a walk in the park.
Last fight before we start to shut down the show. Oscar Valdez, one of the champs at 126 pounds. He's fighting on the same night in Reno on ESPN against Jason Sanchez. And I'll go to you, Jacob. Sanchez is undefeated. And he's a pretty skilled guy. The problem that I have is, Jacob, is that the level of opposition is pretty nondescript. And he's young, 23, 24 years old. So from an overall experience perspective, he's getting the title shot, but I don't know whether he's really ready for this kind of opportunity. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't really. I mean, this is kind of another head scratcher. I'm not sure how he got this title shot. I know he's undefeated, but like you were saying, you look at his opponents. I mean, their records were nothing to write home about. He beat a 15-0 guy in Panama City. Unanimous decision. But other than that, I mean, everybody else is pretty much has like losing records. So I expect we'll see more. The real story here will be more of how Oscar Valdez is adjusting to the Reynoso training. Because I think this will be their third fight together, if I'm not mistaken. So as he's making those adjustments and changes, to see how he's doing as a fighter under that new tutelage. So I think that'll be the real story here. Not so much, who his opponent is.
Gail McGregor, your thoughts on this fight?
It's a keep busy fight for Valdez, and it's a test fight for a young guy in Sanchez. Sanchez fought on the February 2nd undercard in Frisco, so and performed very well. So, you know, I will give credit to Sanchez for stepping up in opposition. You know, this is a big test, and once again, you know, every one of these guys who's young, hungry, counted out, junior, not as experienced, you know, they all say themselves as the next Andy Ruiz. They're all fired up. You know, it's one of those. But Valdez has got twice the number of rounds in the ring as Sanchez does, right there. You know, that is a tremendous problem for Sanchez. But, you know, they share a promoter. It's makeable. You know, what can we say? This is his reward for going with the program. He gets the shot.
Are you as dismissive about this fight, McGregor, as you was about the Triple G Rolls fight?
A little bit, yeah, but not as much, just because Sanchez is younger. Yeah, he doesn't have a good resume as such. I mean, but however, he is the WBO youth champion at featherweight, right? He won that,
Yeah.
so that
one
would
of
explain
those
how he
ring.
kind of got those fights.
I
It gives
can't.
me an explanation because it gives him some form of ranking points in the WBO. Just like when Yard went to number one by winning the WBO European title from Barany or whatever his name was. So I can see how he might have shot up somewhere in their rankings to possibly make the fight seem accessible as a voluntary. Having said that, he has a good job and decent feet. However, he hasn't really done that against anybody of high opposition. And Valdez is quite an exciting fighter. He's strong, he's robust, powerful, especially to the body. He hits you quite hard to the body. I can only see this going one way, and that's probably like an early to mid round stoppage, like somewhere between 3 and 5, maybe 7 at the latest. But yeah, it doesn't really excite me. It's a stay busy fight. It really is, until maybe the Warrington fight gets made, because I've heard rumors of that for like nearly like a year. So.
And I think we're going to shut the show down on that note. Again, I want to thank everybody in the YouTube chat. The YouTube chat was pretty live. I want to thank Overhand. I want to thank Sector, Muhammad, Lisa Bales, not Muhammad, excuse me. McGregor, you was in the chat earlier. There was a couple more folks in the chat. Thomas Riley, and early on, Mr. Thumper. Again, if you like what you heard this evening on YouTube, make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, and also subscribe to us on iTunes for how long we're on iTunes, because iTunes is getting ready to shut down. But also subscribe to us on Spotify. We're on Spotify. We're on SoundCloud as well. So make sure to subscribe to Pound for Pound Box Report.
Like they're gonna still have a platform for podcasts. They're just, iTunes is basically going away, and they're gonna have 3 separate, like one is dedicated to music, one is dedicated to video, movies, and one's dedicated to podcasts. So they'll still be available. It just won't be in the iTunes format. It'll just be a different format.
Okay, gotcha. Thanks for the update. Going to go around the panel here. I want to thank first and foremost Daniel for joining us. If you want to check him out on Twitter, talking boxing, talking the NBA, especially when it comes to the Miami Heat. Also check out his columns on the Inscriber, and check out his show with Joe and Francis for boxing. You can follow him on Twitter at Rawkus99, RAWKUS99 on Twitter. I'm going around the panel here. First time here on Pound for Pound Box Report. McGregor, otherwise known as Unrivaled Boxing Talking News on YouTube. For those who want to talk the sweet science or anything else, let the folks know where they can find you.
Yeah, if anybody wants to find me, you can find me at Unrivaled Boxing Talking News on YouTube, or at McGregor Boxing on Twitter.
And again, thanks for joining us on the show. Hope to have you on again. Go to you, Jacob from Jackal Boxing, and also sometimes guest on the Wrong Reel movie podcast. For folks who want to talk the sweet science, for those who want to talk movies, let the folks know where they can find you.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, and welcome to Hamed and McGregor. It's nice to have some fresh voices. Shout out to Daniel and Gus, Bo, or Boxing News, Joe and Francis, regulars. Um, but yeah, I can be found on Twitter, JRATM23. Or I just did a episode of the Wrong Reel podcast. It's basically all about movies and TV shows, and it was a Steven Soderbergh kind of best of episode. They just got finished post. If you guys like movies, they got finished posting a best of. They do like a series where they take a 1 year of cinema, and I think it was 1954 they just did, and they talk about like the best of that year. But it's like the fifth, I think, in their series that they've done. But real good stuff if you like movies. Check it out.
And last but certainly not least, Gail from Communities Digital News, for those who want to talk boxing, for those who want to talk media, because you do teach media relations, for those who want to talk small business advice, Dancing with the Stars, Game of Thrones, Game of Thrones. She does it all. Let the folks know where they can find you.
Well, hell yeah. And I'm watching the Isle of Man TT right now. It's so damn, I can't stand it. I can be found with my regular boxing column at Communities Digital News, and that is COM, COMM, Digi, DIGI News, comdiginews.com. My Golovkin profile with video is up tonight.
And if you want to talk boxing, music, fitness, you know what it is on Twitter, Brother JR at Brother JR76. As I said to begin the show, if you want to if you want to find out all things regarding Pound for Pound Boxing Report, blog page is the place to go to. P4pboxingreport.wordpress.com. That's the link. You check the right of the blog page, you'll find links to where to find us all over social media, where to find us on all platforms that carry podcasts. Also, the two donate links. Also, shout out to Gus. Shout out to Gus who wasn't able to make it this week. Let donation be the best nation. Got a PayPal and a Cash Me link on the blog, on Pound for Pound Box Report blog page. And I am a health and fitness coach for Beachbody. Gail, we got a wink, wink, nod, nod. Let's Build Together challenge. I'm beginning that. That's going to start July the 1st. The goal is to have 5 people take part in my July 1st, in the July Let's Build Together health and fitness group challenge. Links to my online coaching page on Beachbody is on the Pound for Pound Boxing Report blog page as well. So if you're into fitness, if you're thinking about getting fitness, getting your body right, getting your mind right, or some interesting things on all things Beachbody programs, supplements, uh, workout materials, workout bands, weights, equipment, in other words, please check out my online health and fitness page on Pound for Pound Box Report. On the next episode, we will do a recap of Golovkin and Steve Rolls. We will do a recap of Oscar Valdez and Jason Sanchez, and we will do a preview of Tyson Fury fighting in the United States. He's fighting Tom Schwartz. On the undercard of that, Sullivan Barrera. He's going to be fighting Jesse Hart. Michaela Mayer is going to be fighting, for those who are fans of women's boxing, she's going to be fighting a junior lightweight contest. And very intriguing fight that's taking place over in England. Going to be televised on ESPN Plus, excuse me, as Josh Warrington, who we talked about briefly during the show tonight, is going to be fighting Kid Galahad. Very interesting matchup. I'm going to make sure to check that out personally. Jason Wilborn, he's going to be fighting on the undercard. So going to be discussing and previewing those fights. Again, thanks for everybody who joined us in the live YouTube chat. For Daniel, who joined us on the show earlier. For Hamed, who joined us on the show earlier. For McGregor, aka Unrivaled Boxing. For Jacob, for Gail, this has been episode 254 Pound for Pound Boxing Report. I'm your host, Michael. We will see you next time. Everyone have a good evening. Good night.
Good night.